Thank you to the organizers, to Behzad, and to this wonderful institution for hosting us today, and thank you all for being here. As you can see, my topic today is the thought of Fethullah Gülen, the Hizmet Movement, and the climate crisis. No issue will require greater trust and collaboration in coming decades than how humanity addresses the climate crisis. The reality of the crisis is unmistakable, as the graph on the screen indicates. The U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has documented that globally, the 10 hottest years since 1880 have happened in the last decade. And the consequences of this rising heat are unmistakable in lived experience. Rising seas, super hurricanes and floods, drought, wildfires, scalding hot summer days. The prospect of an uninhabitable earth, as David Foster Wells put it, looms. In light of this crisis, can the theological inspiration of Fethullah Gülen, combined with the social movement energy of the global Hizmet movement, as profiled helpfully by scholars like Pim Valkenburg and Mohammed Chattin, serve to mobilize people of faith and reason to act to mitigate the effects of climate change? In brief, I will outline 3 areas where Gülen's theology and the Hizmet movement show exemplary potential to work effectively on the climate crisis. I will then pose 3 brief questions, really matters for research more than anything else, and action that suggest ways the movement must continue to develop and expand. First, building on Said Nursi, Fethullah Gülen encouraged human beings to fly with 2 wings, that is, to unite scientific reasoning with spiritual wisdom. In many ways, Gülen foresaw the destruction of the earth that followed from science shorn of spiritual wisdom and of spirituality without scientific integrity. Quote, "Underlying the threat of pollution," he wrote, "is the concept brought about by scientific materialism that nature is an accumulation of things that has no value outside its ability to meet physical needs. In fact," he went on, "nature has a certain sacredness, for it is an arena in which God's beautiful names are displayed." Put bluntly, Gülen concludes, quote, "There can be no conflict among the Quran, the universe, and the sciences." Spiritual wisdom can be a surprising source to build trust and to bring people together to discover creative solutions to the climate crisis, as climate activist Tariq al-Olemi explained in a TED Talk in June 2025. From his work on the ground in restoring devastated ecosystems, al-Olemi observed that the most resilient members of the communities drew on their spiritualities to sustain their work. Our faith traditions, Olemi suggests, are living laboratories of resilience. In the worst crises, people turn to something older than markets, older than nations, that are not relics, he said, but tested over millennia through collapse after collapse, end quote. Prophets don't just express hope, he concludes. They engage the moral imagination to envision and to enact a future that rationality alone cannot fathom. We need, once again, to fly with 2 wings, to navigate these challenging times, holding together the rigors of science with the wisdom of the Spirit, building trust between scientists and citizen advocates. Second, the Hizmet community has decades of experience in interreligious engagement. Hizmet is well poised through its emphasis on dialogue, tolerance, or hoshguru, and what I called principled pluralism to play a key role in growing trust and collaboration across communities. Gülen again expresses the intention clearly. Quote, "There is no reason to fear one another," he begins. He then quotes a Turkish folk saying to describe the mindset necessary for dialogue. "Take what is pleasant and leave what causes grief." And finally, there's a spirit to Hizmet's principled pluralism. Quote, "Debate should not be for the sake of ego, but rather to enable the truth to appear," end quote. Gülen advocated for and exemplified an exalted ideal of trusting people from any tradition or from none to work together toward truth. Practically, this Hizmet emphasis on dialogue, on hoşgörü, means coalitions can develop even if agreement is not found on every matter. Practicality prevails. We can plant trees together or support a sustainable forest industry, working with groups like Together for Trees in Kenya or the Global Tree Initiative, which now works in 69 countries, or Sankalp Taru Foundation here in India. We can plant trees together even if we don't agree on the doctrine of the Trinity. We can push for policies that speed up the transition from fossil fuels to green energy, even if we disagree about whether Jesus was prophet or Messiah. We can urge people to adopt a plant-based diet or a diet based on sustainable agriculture, even if we pray in different ways and in different places. The Hizmet movement now has decades of growing coalitions and trust across human communities for common causes. It can organize and do more. And third, as I argue in my biography of Fethullah Gülen, the DNA of Hizmet has been to organize social enterprises through practices of istishara, mutual consultation. This mode of doing business generates wealth not to line the pockets of the few, but to solve common problems in society. We will need many new startups, social businesses, built by istishara, where all stakeholders have a say in the enterprise to mitigate the climate crisis. Gülen wrote that, quote, "For the Muslims of today, consultation," he here used the Arabic term shura, "for the Muslims of today, consultation is a vital attribute and an essential rule. According to the Quran, mutual consultation is the clearest sign of a believing community." In Turkey and elsewhere, where people inspired by Gülen have landed, the businesses that emerged from the trust at the heart of mutual consultation included television networks like Samanyolu, newspapers like Zaman, magazines like The Fountain, social service agencies like Kimse Yokmu, a bank, Bank Asya, hospitals like Shifa, and more, all in service to society and to address social needs. Why not social enterprises to address the climate crisis? Today, and I was actually a screen behind, I'm sorry about that. Today, there are scientists, engineers, communicators, and business people inspired by Gülen who can take his model of mutual accountability, mutual consultation, and put it to use addressing the climate crisis. There are prophets consistent with the prophets awaiting to be mobilized in this great effort. And there are blueprints out there about how to proceed from geniuses like Bill Gates, scholars like Jeffrey Sachs, unitary thinkers like indigenous American botanist Robin Wall Kimmerer, and many more. The steps are clear. Societies must transition to electric vehicles. Engineers must design and refine efficient carbon capture and removal processes. Industries and agriculture need to decarbonize, and states and nations must advance green energy generation, such as solar, wind, and fusion power, and plant more trees, among other initiatives yet to be imagined. A focus on the climate crisis by the Hizmet community will both live out the vision of Fethullah Gülen to fly with two wings and open up opportunities for sustainable, in several senses, social enterprises for the future. Now, Fethullah Gülen was a man of his time, and the Hizmet community, of course, suffered a severe shock in being the scapegoat to solidify a dictator's fragile regime, a shock from which the movement is still recovering. There are then three questions that I want to pose about the legacy of Fethullah Gülen and the future of the Hizmet movement in relationship to the climate crisis as I close. First, Gülen's theology, like much of Western theology, is anthropocentric, focused primarily on the destiny of the human individual in relationship to God. In contrast, eco-theology in the secular ecological movement tends to be terra-centric, earth-centered. Can Hizmet articulate a theology and ethic of earth care that is appropriately theocentric and terra-centric, bridging with integrity the trust with integrity and trust the spiritual and scientific communities? I hope so. There are other examples of Muslims doing such work in theology and ethics out there, beginning with Saeed Hossein Nasr's groundbreaking work, and with many other contemporary agencies and research to draw from, such as Green Faith and the Global Muslim Climate Network. And in coming months, I've already started, scouring Gülen's writings for his implicit eco-theology, as I am working on a book on trees in the history of religions. I expect to find help from him. In fact, I know already I will find help from him. Similarly, Gülen brilliantly recognized that being with the oppressed is the same as being with God. How does this take on meaning when the oppressed is the planet Earth itself? Eco-theologians often offer neo-animism as an answer. We recognize that the living but suffering earth embodies God's spirit, God's compassion. Is this a road too far? Or is there a way within Islamic theology to recognize the living God within and in relationship, and that's maybe should be and or, in relationship to water, trees and plants, rocks, and all of the living earth? Certainly, Islamic art and architecture are rich with natural and especially arboreal imagery, pointing to an awareness of divine immanence in beauty and harmony that accords well with what eco-theologians suggest is a necessary turn in the face of this crisis. And there's an emerging and thriving field in Muslim eco-theology. You see a few of the works up there on the screen. That is inspiring, courageous, and theologically profound. Finally, and this is my last of the 3 points, or 3 questions, social movement effectiveness requires an unrelenting focus on achieving purpose. To date, the social enterprises of Hizmet have been diverse and grassroots. Coordinating with the ecological initiatives of agencies such as the United Nations, Religions for Peace, the world's Parliament of Religions, and other interreligious groups will be crucial to generate the scale necessary to develop solutions to this most pressing challenge facing humanity in our collective history. A future of flourishing with dynamic public-private partnerships, cooperation across agencies and faith traditions on common ventures, and the development of social enterprises that can help us to heal and to repair the planet awaits only our energy and commitment to bring them to life. I find that future very exciting, and I'm confident that it is in keeping with the future that Fethullah Gülen envisioned for the planet too. And so I'll conclude with some of his words. As he put it once, people of faith see all existence, living or not, as a family. They make contact with the rest of creation, taking an active part in the life of things, and in their conscience they feel the vastness of the title of vicegerent which has been bequeathed to them. They inhale the scent of the earth as if it were the sweetest of aromas. They salute the orchards and gardens, the mountains and valleys, the grasses and trees, the roses and the flowers with the language of their heart, as if these things too had senses. They caress all creatures that they encounter, as if they were friends assigned to keep them company in this guest house. With every action, they demonstrate that they have been sent to the earth as a sign for agreement and reconciliation. End quote. May it be so.